What's that coming over the airwaves tonight? Samurai Smackdown, Takamori takes a tumble. Gold Rush turns to Gold Flush thanks to Gould. And Deacon's in, Barton's out, Australia's PM switcheroo. Plus, coming up, we ask the age-old question, can a chicken wearing a top hat still lay an egg? Our expert says possibly, but only if it's a Tuesday. Those are the headlines. Time to tune out, folks.
Newsbang, crafting a sarcastic shot at the sad state of news reporting. 1877.
The Imperial Japanese army has crushed a band of rebel samurai led by the notorious Saigo Takamori at the Battle of Shiroyama. Eyewitnesses report that the samurai, armed with nothing but pointy sticks and stern looks, were no match for the army's state-of-the-art pea shooters and fancy Western underpants.
One soldier, Private Tanaka, described the scene. It was like watching a bunch of geriatrics try to fight off a horde of caffeinated toddlers. The rebels kept shouting about honor and tradition while we pelted them with modernity and indoor plumbing.
The battle marks the end of the Satsuma Rebellion, a conflict sparked when the government decided to trade in katanas for typewriters. Saigo Takamori, last seen fleeing the battlefield in his lucky loincloth, is rumored to have muttered, "I would have gotten away with it too if it weren't for those meddling Meiji modernizers."
1869.
It has been revealed that the entire United States gold market was nearly cornered by two men with ridiculous facial hair. J. Gould and James Fisk, known in financial circles as the Moustache Marauders, hatched a plan so devious it would make a Bond villain blush.
These dastardly speculators hoarded more gold than a dragon with a glitter fetish, causing prices to skyrocket faster than a champagne cork at a Wall Street Christmas party. The nation teetered on the brink of economic collapse, with investors losing their shirts, trousers, and in some cases, their entire wardrobes.
Eyewitness Jebediah Moneybags reported, "I saw grown men weeping into their ledgers. It was carnage, I tell you. Carnage!"
President Grant, upon hearing the news, reportedly spat out his whiskey and exclaimed, "Not on my watch, you mustachioed miscreants." He then ordered the Treasury to flood the market with more gold than you'd find in a rapper's mouth.
The resulting crash left Wall Street in tatters, with stockbrokers reduced to selling pencils on street corners. The event, now known as Black Friday, serves as a stark reminder that greed, like an ill-fitting toupee, will always be exposed in the end.
Australia was thrown into chaos today as Alfred Deakin, a man with a beard so magnificent it required its own postcode, seized control of the country's highest office. Eyewitnesses report that Deakin burst into Parliament House riding a kangaroo and wielding a boomerang, shouting, "I'm the bloody PM now, you drongos."
Former Prime Minister Edmund Barton was last seen fleeing the scene, muttering something about getting on the sauce with the High Court boys. When asked for comment, Barton's wife Marge said, "Thank God he's gone. Now I can finally redecorate without him whinging about his precious Federation wallpaper."
Deakin wasted no time in implementing his radical agenda, including mandatory daily Vegemite consumption and replacing the national anthem with a didgeridoo solo. Local pub owner Bruce McCocker praised the new PM, saying, "Finally, a leader who understands the importance of a good stubby holder."
Newsbang, making sense of senselessness, one factual bite at a time.
And now, with a forecast as unpredictable as a squirrel on espresso, here's our weather presenter, the inimitable Shakanaka Giles.
Right, let's get to it then. Tomorrow, in the south, it'll be a bit of a mixed bag, like a Christmas stocking full of used tissues and half-eaten Quality Street. Expect a light drizzle, the kind that seeps into your socks like a disappointed parent's disapproval. Up north, it'll be a proper bluster, the kind that'll have you clutching your hat like a pensioner holding onto their pension. Gusts strong enough to make the Queen's corgis do a lap of Buckingham Palace. And in the Midlands, a right old autumnal affair, crisp and cool, the sort of weather that has you digging out your woolly jumpers, the ones with the questionable stains from last year's bonfire night. Oh, and let's not forget, it's the 24th of September, which means the Great British Bake Off is back on the telly, so hunker down, get the kettle on, and enjoy a nice slice of Victoria sponge as you weather the storm. And that's all the weather.
(1877).
And now, a report from this day in 1877, when the Imperial Japanese army crushed the last stand of rebel samurai at the Battle of Shiroyama. The clash marked the end of the Satsuma Rebellion, a desperate attempt by traditionalists to resist the sweeping changes of the Meiji Restoration. Led by the charismatic Saigo Takamori, the rebels' guerrilla tactics proved no match for the modernized imperial forces. This pivotal moment sealed the fate of Japan's ancient warrior class and paved the way for the nation's rapid modernization. For more on this historical turning point, we go to our war correspondent Brian Bastable.
As I arrive upon the hallowed grounds of Shiroyama, an eerie calm pervades, broken only by the cawing of crows and the distant rumble of thunder. But let me assure you, dear listener, this silence belies the unyielding storm of violence that has so recently ravaged these fields. The final throes of the Satsuma Rebellion, as I am so fortunate to bear witness, unfold before me, pitting the indomitable spirit of the Satsuma samurai against the unyielding tide of the Imperial Japanese army. The skies themselves appear to weep for the blood about to be spilled upon this consecrated soil, a battle that has been raging for weeks. But now, the die is cast. Atop this very hill, a veritable army of rebels, fine, upstanding specimens of fierce loyalty and military prowess, I dare say, have gathered under the singular command of their revered leader, the legendary Saigo Takamori. This evening, the black flags of rebellion wave defiantly, the blood-red sun casting ominous shadows upon the faces of these proud warriors. Meanwhile, their adversaries, the Imperial Japanese army, have descended upon the land in a seemingly inexorable deluge of steel and smoke. They position themselves at the foot of the hill, fortifying their position with barricades of twisted timber and iron. This armada of modern weaponry, a symbol of progress in an industrialized society, bristles with lethal intent directed towards the hearts of the Satsuma rebels. And thus the stage is set. A grim reaper of war has taken its place atop Shiroyama, and a fateful storm of steel, lead, and flame is about to unleash its fury, as if hell itself had opened its maw to swallow the souls of these warriors. The two forces collide in a cacophony of thunderous roars, infernal fire, and flesh-meeting steel. In an instant, the summit is transformed into a hellscape, a nightmare fusion of charred bodies, blood, and flame. The once proud rebels now caught in the vice of unstoppable progress. Limbs and heads are severed, leaving a gruesome tapestry of carnage upon the earth, a stark reminder of the inescapable grip of war. And yet, the Satsuma warriors persist, their indomitable spirit unfazed by the steel leviathan barreling down upon them. With a ferocity that rivals the fury of the tempest, they hurl themselves into the inferno, a final desperate bid for victory, their eyes alight with the fire of 1,000 suns. Yet, even as I bear witness to the rebels' undying valor, I know deep down that their cause is a doomed one. The march of progress, like a mighty glacier, cannot be halted, even by the bravest of men. The samurai, as an institution, is about to be swallowed by the tide of history, never again to rise from the ashes. As the rain begins to fall, extinguishing the fires of war, I cannot help but reflect upon the solemnity of the moment. A long and storied era has come to an end, a melancholic symphony played upon the winds of fate. And thus, dear listener, it is with a heavy heart that I bid you adieu. For tonight, upon this hallowed ground, we have seen the end of an era and the dawn of a new one, the echoes of the battle reverberating in the annals of history. This is Brian Bastable, your purveyor of war, bearing witness to the turning of the tides. Farewell, and may the fates be ever in your favor.
1992.
On this day in 1992, Florida man Ober Chandler was apprehended for a trio of gruesome murders that had haunted Tampa Bay since 1989. The victims? A mother and her 2 teenage daughters, their lives cruelly snuffed out in a case that gripped the nation. Chandler's capture, conviction, and eventual execution serve as a stark reminder of the long arm of the law and the power of forensic evidence. For more on this grim chapter in criminal history, we turn to our crime correspondent, Ken Schitt.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare your ears for a tale of depravity that'll make your stomach churn and your blood boil. It's 1992, and the scum-sucking pond algae known as Ober Chandler has finally been dragged into the light after 3 long years of slithering in the shadows. This festering boil on humanity's ass committed a triple murder back in '89, butchering Joan Rogers and her 2 teenage daughters in Tampa Bay. But justice, that sweet mistress, has finally pulled up her stockings and delivered a roundhouse kick to evil's nuts. How'd they catch this walking bag of human waste, you ask? Well, gather round, kiddies, because this is where it gets interesting. The cops, in a stroke of genius that'd make Sherlock Holmes wet his bloomers, plastered Chandler's chicken scratch handwriting all over billboards. And wouldn't you know it, some eagle-eyed neighbor recognized it faster than a frat boy spots free beer. Now, Chandler's sitting pretty in a cell, probably pissing himself as he awaits the long dick of the law to penetrate his freedom. This cockroach thought he could get away with murder, but he forgot one crucial fact. Evil always leaves a trail, and justice never sleeps. So remember, folks, next time you think about committing a heinous crime, just know that somewhere out there's a Ken Schitt waiting to shove his microphone so far up your ass, you'll be tasting plastic for weeks. This is Ken Schitt, reminding you that karma's a bitch, and she's got perfect aim. Good night, and go fuck yourself, Chandler.
Den tisen der Zeitweiserdam, just to do threes.
And in Australia, 1903 saw the ascension of Alfred Deakin to the role of Prime Minister, marking a pivotal moment in the nation's fledgling democracy. Deakin, a key architect of federation, stepped into the shoes of Edmund Barton, who departed to don the robes of the High Court. This changing of the guard heralded a new era of nation-building, with Deakin's vision shaping everything from naval policy to the selection of Canberra as the capital. But what of the kangaroos? Did they have a say? For more on this antipodian power shift, we go to our correspondent Hardiman Pesto.
Martin, I'm here in Melbourne, Australia, where the mood is electric as Alfred Deakin has just become the second Prime Minister of this fledgling nation. I'm joined by noted historian Professor Sheila Dingo Wrangler. Professor, what can you tell us about this momentous occasion?
Well, Hardiman, it's certainly a significant day for Australia. Mr. Deakin has taken over from Edmund Barton, who's off to the High Court.
Pesto, can you give us some insight into the public's reaction to this change in leadership?
Absolutely, Martin. The streets are awash with, well, not much really. It seems most Australians are too busy fighting off deadly animals to notice the change in government.
Pesto, surely there must be some reaction. This is a pivotal moment in Australian history.
Well, I did speak to one gentleman who said, and I quote, "Struth, mate, another bloke in a fancy hat. Let's throw another shrimp on the barbie." So there's your vox pop, Martin.
That's not exactly hard-hitting journalism, Pesto. Professor Dingo Wrangler, what are the key issues facing Deakin as he takes office?
Well, the new Prime Minister will need to focus on establishing federal institutions, developing the economy, and...
Sorry to interrupt, Professor, but I've just spotted Mr. Deakin himself. Prime Minister, over here.
Pesto, what's happening? Have you managed to get a word with him?
Well, no, Martin. He seems to be running away. Quite fast, actually. For a man in a three-piece wool suit in this heat, he's remarkably sprightly.
Why is he running, Pesto?
I'm not entirely sure, Martin, although it might have something to do with the fact that I'm chasing him with a microphone while shouting Prime Minister at the top of my lungs.
If I may interject, Mr. Deakin is known for his eloquence and intellect, perhaps a more subtle approach.
No time for subtlety, Professor. This is breaking news. Prime Minister, do you have any words for the British public?
Pesto, for heaven's sake, stop chasing the man. Professor, while our correspondent attempts to assault the new Prime Minister, can you tell us about Deakin's political background?
Certainly. Mr. Deakin was a key figure in the Federation movement, and...
Success, Martin. I've cornered him behind a eucalyptus tree.
Pesto, leave the poor man alone and get back to the Professor.
But Martin, he's about to speak. Go on, sir. You're live on Newsbang.
Pesto, I swear if you've tackled the Australian Prime Minister...
Not at all, Martin. Although he does seem to be climbing the tree now. Quite agile for a statesman, I must say.
Right, that's it. Professor Dingo Wrangler, thank you for your time. Pesto, you're fired. Again.
1964.
And on this day in 1964, the Warren Commission dropped a bombshell that shook America to its core. They declared that Lee Harvey Oswald, acting alone, assassinated President John F. Kennedy. No shadowy conspiracies, no grassy knolls, just one man with a rifle and a grudge. The Commission's report was met with raised eyebrows and muttered disbelief from sea to shining sea. For more on this earth-shattering conclusion and its aftermath, we cross live to our American correspondent, Melody Wintergreen. Melody, are Americans buying this lone gunman theory, or is there a whiff of cover-up in the air?
Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where the echoes of the past still reverberate through the corridors of power. It was here, 60 years ago to the day, that the Warren Commission released its final report on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, and what a bombshell it was. The commission, led by the esteemed Chief Justice Earl Warren, concluded that the dastardly deed was the work of one man and one man alone, Lee Harvey Oswald, a lone wolf with a high-powered rifle and a chip on his shoulder the size of the Lone Star State. But as the ink dried on that fateful document, the American people were left with more questions than answers. How could a lowly ex-Marine with a history of mental instability pull off such a brazen and complex plot? Where was the smoking gun? The definitive proof that would lay this conspiracy to rest once and for all. The public cried foul, and the reverberations of that day still echo through the halls of history. Today, we stand in the shadow of that divisive report, a monument to the enduring mysteries that haunt the Kennedy assassination. The streets of Milwaukee are quiet, but the ghosts of the past refuse to be silenced. As we gaze upon the landmarks that bore witness to that fateful day, we are reminded that the search for truth is a never-ending quest, one that has captivated and confounded a nation for 6 decades and counting. The Warren Commission may have had the final word, but the American people have never stopped demanding answers. And so, the debate rages on, a battle of wills and words that refuses to fade into the annals of history. Melody Wintergreen, reporting for Newsbang, where the echoes of the past refuse to be silenced.
Newsbang, the truth fully loaded with facts.
And now we turn to our correspondent Penelope Windchime, who's about to regale us with tales of mountaineering feats and fiery forests.
Greetings, eco-warriors and tree-huggers. Penelope Windchime here with a blast from the past that'll make your leaves quiver. On this day, in 1975, 2 brave souls, Dougal Haston and Doug Scott decided to scale Mount Everest's southwest face, a climb so treacherous, even the mountain goats refused to attempt it. These intrepid explorers, armed with nothing but their wits, some fancy oxygen tanks, and an army of Sherpas, conquered the impossible. It's said they left a trail of tea bags and crumpet crumbs to mark their ascent, proving once and for all that British cuisine can survive even the harshest conditions. But wait, there's more. Rewind to 1950 when Mother Nature decided to throw the ultimate barbecue, the Chinchaga fire. This inferno was so massive it made the sun turn blue and the moon blush. The smoke travelled halfway around the world, giving everyone a taste of Canadian hospitality. It burned for 5 whole months, longer than most celebrity marriages. The fire was so big, it's rumoured that marshmallow sales skyrocketed and s'mores became Canada's national dish. The event sparked a revolution in forest management, with trees now required to attend fire safety classes and carry tiny fire extinguishers. Remember, folks, whether you're climbing mountains or fighting fires, always bring a reusable water bottle and a positive attitude. This has been Penelope Windchime, reminding you that history is just nature's way of recycling events. Toodle-oo!
And now, for a traffic report that's truly ahead of its time, we cross live to our temporal transportation correspondent, Polly Beep.
Good evening, road warriors and time travellers. This is Polly Beep with your Tuesday night traffic report, coming to you live from 1568. Breaking news from the Battle of San Juan de Ulua. The M1568 is experiencing heavy congestion due to English privateers engaging in unauthorised trade. Expect delays and possible cannonball fire. The Spanish Main is a right mess, with 4 out of 6 English ships now decorating the seafloor. If you're planning on sailing tonight, best reschedule or risk becoming a rather fetching coral reef. We've got reports of a massive naval jam near the coast of New Spain. The newly appointed Viceroy, Martin Enriquez de Almanza, is leading a Spanish armada that's causing quite the bottleneck. Sailors are advised to find alternative routes or risk being press-ganged into service. In other news, tensions between Spain and England are rising faster than the tide. Expect increased border checks and longer wait times at customs. Don't forget your letters of marque, folks. And finally, a reminder to all English traders. The Spanish colonial dominance is in full effect. Any attempts to bypass official trade routes may result in your ship being turned into driftwood. That's all for now. Remember, whether you're sailing the 7 seas or just popping down to the local tavern, always wear your life jacket and keep your powder dry.
1911.
Calamity Prenderville brings us a special report on a historic British aviation disaster that occurred on this day in 1911. Calamity, enlighten us about this airborne fiasco.
Good evening, viewers. On this day in 1911, British innovation soared to new heights and then promptly crashed back down to Earth. His Majesty's Airship No. 1, affectionately known as the Mayfly, lived up to its name by lasting about as long as its insect namesake.
This marvel of British engineering was designed to be the envy of the German Zeppelin programme. Equipped with a state-of-the-art nose for sniffing out enemy ships and a built-in tea-trolley for those long reconnaissance missions, the Mayfly was poised to revolutionise aerial warfare.
But alas, Mother Nature had other plans. On this fateful day, as the Mayfly was being wheeled out for its maiden voyage, a gust of wind, no doubt sent by jealous German weather scientists,
snapped our proud airship into like a giant airborne digestive biscuit.
The culprit? Some say it was the experimental inflatable rudder design. Others blame the last-minute addition of a rooftop croquet court. Whatever the cause, this setback allowed the Germans to maintain their lead in the crucial field of floating war balloons.
But fear not. British ingenuity cannot be quashed so easily. Rumour has it that plans are already underway for His Majesty's Airship No. 2, now with 50% more tea storage and a revolutionary anti-wind force field powered by the hot air of Parliament. This has been Calamity Prendeville, reminding you that in the race for aerial supremacy, sometimes it's better to keep your feet on the ground. Back to you in the studio.
Newsbang, rearranging reality one fact at a time.
And now, for a right royal roundup, we turn to our correspondent Sandy O'Shaughnessy, who's been keeping a keen eye on the comings and goings of the monarchy. Sandy, what regal revelations do you have for us today?
Nice and easy.
Good evening, dear listeners, and a very warm welcome to you all. This is Sandy O'Shaughnessy, your friendly neighbourhood royal raconteur, coming to you live from the cosy confines of Newsbang Towers. As Pamela Whipple hands over the reins, I can't help but feel like I'm inheriting a scepter of sorts. Speaking of which, let's dive into a right royal tale that'll knock your crown jewels off. Picture this. It's 1993, and Cambodia decides it's high time to dust off the old throne and give monarchy another go. After a wee break of 23 years, barely enough time to finish a proper Irish stew, if you ask me, King Norodom Sihanouk finds himself back in the hot seat. Now that's what I call a comeback. It's like he went out for a pack of cigarettes and came back 2 decades later with a shiny new crown. You know, it reminds me of my Aunt Petunia's famous disappearing act at the O'Malley wedding of 72. She nipped out for some fresh air and didn't resurface until 95, claiming she'd been abducted by leprechauns. But I digress. Now, this Sihanouk fella, he's been king, prime minister, head of state. He's worn more hats than a milliner with a multiple personality disorder. And just when everyone thought he'd hung up his royal robes for good, boom! He's back on the throne, quicker than you can say constitutional monarchy. It's a bit like musical chairs, isn't it? Except instead of chairs, it's thrones. And instead of music, it's political upheaval. 1 minute you're sipping tea in exile, the next you're waving to adoring crowds from a balcony. It's enough to give a chap whiplash. Now, I've received a letter from Seamus in Kilkenny who asks, Sandy, have you ever restored a monarchy? Well, Seamus, I can't say I have, but I did once restore an antique gramophone I found in my grand's attic. Does that count? No? Well, we can't all be kingmakers, can we? But let's not forget, dear listeners, that while King Norodom was reclaiming his throne, somewhere in a parallel universe, J.R. Ewing was probably plotting his next oil deal. Life's funny like that, isn't it? As we wrap up this royal rendezvous, remember, whether you're a king or a commoner, we're all just trying to keep our crowns on straight. So until next time, keep your scepters polished and your royal waves practiced. This is Sandy O'Shaughnessy, bidding you a fond farewell. Remember, it's not goodbye, it's just, see you later, alligator. In a while, crocodile. Cheerio.
All over the country for everyone.
And on this day in 1869, Wall Street was plunged into chaos as speculators Jay Gould and James Fisk attempted to corner the gold market. Their audacious scheme, which involved hoarding vast quantities of the precious metal, sent shockwaves through the financial world. President Grant was forced to intervene, ordering the Treasury to flood the market with gold. The resulting crash, dubbed Black Friday, left investors reeling and the economy in turmoil. For more on this historical financial fiasco, we go to our business correspondent, Perkins Stornoway.
That's the BBC, coming to you from the international marketplace of Wall Street. Yes, Wall Street, where the savvy punters, Jay Gould and James Fisk, tried to hoard all the gold. Dogger, moderate, occasionally rough. Now these two guys, they were pretty slick. They cornered the market like a pair of tight-fisted troglodytes. The price of gold shot up like a rocket with no parachute. But then President Grant got wind of their little scheme. Thames fair. He ordered the Treasury to sell some gold to break their monopoly. Fast net, occasionally poor. Oh boy, did that cause a ruckus. The price of gold plummeted faster than a lead balloon in a hurricane. Investors lost their shirts and their pants too. The public was furious. They wanted blood. They wanted justice. Shannon, occasionally rough. Calls for tighter regulation rang out louder than 1,000 foghorns. So that's the story from Wall Street today, a tale of greed, power, and the perils of cornering the market. Biscay, fair. Let that be a lesson to all you wannabe gold diggers out there. Don't mess with the man in charge. And now, back to our regular programming.
Midden Newsbang, combing the crispies from the truth-teller's toast.
Just time for a final look at tomorrow's papers. The Times: Turks whip Christians in battle near Bulgaria. There's a big map there of the area. The Telegraph lead with 38 IRA men make great escape from Ulster jail. That's across 8 pages. And Viking raid on Spain ends in rout. That's The Guardian. There's a photograph there of a small wooden boat. Today have gone with Fairy Sea's Ghost near Reservoir. That's got nothing to do with anything, but there's a good picture. And finally, The Mail. Man grows pumpkin in basement. Well, I think that's it. The cold winds are forecast to return by the weekend, so dress warmly for crime.
Tune in next time for more artificially intelligent hilarity. Newsbang is a comedy show, written and recorded by AI. All voices impersonated. Nothing here is real. Good night.